Hi, and welcome to Coffee with Dogs. I'm Susan Allen Medium. I'm an evidential psychic medium and animal communicator. This podcast is a place to share insights into the spirit world and soulful stories of animals and what they can teach us about a life aligned with love. So grab your mug and let's dive into some magic together. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Dogs.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
We've got a concept today that you know more about than anyone, and I want to talk about it. The Rainbow Bridge. First of all, just what do you think of that analogy or that image?
Well, I think it's beautiful when we think of a rainbow. The rainbow that we see in our sky, we don't get to see that often. And then when we see it, it's a magical moment. It's hard to capture on a phone.
Mhm.
The phone quality, really hard to capture what we can see with the physical eye, because I really think when we see a rainbow, it is a magical moment because they are so rare. So to do the analogy and use it for a pet over the Rainbow Bridge, I've used that when I do animal events, I've used that title. I think it connotates a very special moment in our lives when we see a rainbow. I that's what I think of the concept. On a completely different level, I think it's so much more awe-inspiring when we lose a pet, where they go and who takes them there, or how they transfer their soul, or a person or another being helping them transfer their soul to the next level. I think it's so much more than a rainbow bridge, even though the concept of rainbow is so magnificent.
With that poem or image that people talk about, what I hear people don't like about it is the concept of them waiting. Because, like, part of that poem, whatever it is that they're like waiting for you. I know it's hard for our human brains to wrap around the idea of time and space not existing on the other side, but what can you say about that for those that are bothered by the idea of our pets just waiting for us there, waiting for us to pass so they can see us again?
Well, they don't wait for us to pass because they're always around us. The soul is so multidimensional, and the concept is so hard to wrap your brain around because we think we are these one-dimensional souls, but we're so multidimensional. It's very, very hard, for the human brain, for how we were raised, or even how we see ourselves, to realize our pets are not hanging out waiting for us and missing us. They have this huge life, and their soul is with us. They're above us, they're around us, they're helping us. And a lot of my clients will still feel their animals around them. So I feel mine, I'm sure you feel yours.
Yeah, I think especially the time thing is hard to understand.
It is. Well, there is no time in the next world. Like, we establish time for ourselves. We establish the time of Christmas. We establish the time of that you put your kids to bed. Like, that's all us,
Mhm.
because we need beginnings and ends, but there is no end to a soul.
Yeah.
We need to celebrate birthdays, and that is a human condition. But we are so much more than that. And an animal soul is so light, it's angelic. So when you think of an angel, it's even beyond the fourth dimension. I actually feel that that's where the animals are, beyond the fourth dimension, in the angelic realm, in the heavenly realm. When they choose to be there, they're there. And when they choose to be with us, they're with us. They're always guiding and guarding us. So there is no concept of them waiting at the Rainbow Bridge for us. But generally speaking, when we do transfer to the spirit world, they're they're first or with our loved one.
Yeah.
You know, a parent, a grandmother, a sibling, that human when we had our time here is usually the first to greet us, but I often see the animals running first.
Ugh. What happens for them to your understanding? What have they shown you about when a pet passes? What did they experience?
They immediately go to a higher realm. That's what I have seen them show me. But I also see them, I really think that they connect with the loved one in spirit that was closest to us. I often will say or see, if I can recollect, there were times when a person would have lost a pet, and I say, there's a woman here and she looks like this, and I feel it's your grandmother. And she's like, I prayed to my grandmother to meet my animal. So
Mhm.
it's just very validating. When we ask, it's really given, but we can't see it with our eyes.
Mhm.
So therefore we don't believe it, and oftentimes in the reading, people will say, does he know that I really didn't want to put him down, but he
Mhm.
was so sick. Does he know? And it's like, well, not only does he know, he's like with you right now while we're doing this. He hears everything or she hears everything. There's no concept there. There's not even a concept of sex. Like oftentimes in a reading, I'll say she when it's a he, and somebody will say, well, it's a she, and the person gets our human condition is we would get offended that the medium wouldn't know that it was a he or she, but when I'm channeling, there is no concept of the sex.
Yeah.
Does that make
No, the
sense?
soul isn't gendered. Yeah.
Yeah, unless it's so significant for the person that's living. I remember I talked to a soul pet, and it sounded like, a salty old doggy kind of fisherman type. And he was coming through with all these messages for this caregiver that had lost him. I think it was in a rescue, and she just was attached to him. And it showed me that when he wanted to let me know how attracted he was to his caregiver, I know, right?
I've never heard that.
This soul, neither did I. It's like, that's why I love the work, because I learn through talking to a deceased pet or a deceased loved one more than I would know when I'm in an average day-to-day life. There's so much more.
Mhm. Do they meet other pets on the other
Yeah,
side?
absolutely. The pets they grew up with, if they were rescued and they were missing their mom, in the cases where animals were found and abandoned, and or their mother was tragically killed before them, before the time that they were weaned. Oh my God, they're so excited to see their mom again in spirit. They absolutely love to tell me that.
How cool. What do they do? I know it's a weird question, but like once they're up there and we are so sad and it's right after, are they more around us at the beginning? I think I've heard you say that before, where they're around us a lot at the beginning because we need that from them.
It's not that they need that, that we need that. It's that they're worried about us because when we're grieving, just like if we just got out of the hospital or we're in pain, they want to protect us and be around us. So when we're deep in grief, is usually the time people will say, I'm just not getting a message. And well, the grief is weighing down the buoyancy of our soul to be able to connect with them. Buoyancy and being lighthearted is really the key to also helping them release and go higher, but almost impossible. Like we have to honor our grief. Very, very important. We don't, and some people do it so differently. Like I have a girlfriend that ran out and rescued another animal like within weeks of the death of her beloved, right? Dog. And I wouldn't be able to do that, me personally. And other people deal with their grief, and I respect everyone how they deal with the grief. There was a woman whose husband ran out and got her the same breed in a puppy
Mm.
right after the loss. He thought he was helping. And she was so shut down, and this poor puppy
Ugh.
was wanting her, but she wasn't wanting it. And until we worked on the level of grief that she had for the loss of her beloved, that was a soul pet, she couldn't come to terms with now looking at this puppy, let alone putting it in her lap and bonding with it. So that was her process that she needed. And we don't know, we don't know how we're going to process a loss. When I lost Rosie, I had talked to a bunch of animals on towards their final days and then talked to them once they went into the spirit world for my clients. And I thought, my dog's been so sick and she has suffered, and I don't want her to suffer any longer, and I don't want her to be in pain. I didn't feel this dramatic suffering, and neither did my vet. But I remember my husband and my lady that comes to help me clean weekly, they were running around telling me, you have to help her cross over. And even a friend of mine said, oh, it's time. Well, it really wasn't. When an animal still has a life force, it's like taking care of an elderly parent. If they're eating and drinking and they have still a force of life and nature in them, I choose to see it out, to see it till they're ready.
Hmm.
And we were checking in. I was checking in with her. She wasn't ready. It's interesting how they're okay with what we decide. So I've had people say to me, did I do it too soon? Did I? Well, the thought wouldn't be in your head to begin with
Hmm.
to help them cross over to the Rainbow Bridge, which I love. I love that concept. It's so beautiful and it's a beautiful image. So I love that concept when it comes to our pets. But the idea wouldn't have come to you if it wasn't an option. And the minute we have the thought or an idea, your dog knows or your animal knows because they're picking up on everything we're thinking about. And it doesn't mean it's the wrong idea, but I can tell you our animals would never, what they come through with, they don't want us beating ourselves up about having euthanized them. They don't want us suffering. They want us in the joy and buoyancy of how they live their life. And they want us to remember those times rather than the last year or the last 5 months or the last day or the last, 24 hour, we're supposed to be experiencing the joy of them, not the sadness, because they don't spend time there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've heard in your pet readings, that's where we get stuck, right? Is they're
Yes.
spinning, right? Was it the right time? Do they know? Were they ready? Are they angry at me for doing it? Or were they okay? And we're stuck on all those emotions, but they're never angry or upset, and they're not
Never.
scared of going, correct?
No, there's no fear. It's our vibe and our feelings about having done this or needing to do this. Or I think, like I've said it before, I think it's the bravest act as a human to be able to help them. It's a brave act. I mean, and we end up
Mm-hmm.
suffering
Mm-hmm.
over it. We really do. They don't want us to have that vibration. They're okay with whatever because they're always there. Their soul is buoyant and loose and living and having fun. They're not stuck in the human condition that we get stuck in. Whereas, like, having these thoughts that go through our brain, we'll just have this horrible thought of having putting them down or how much we perceive that they would have suffered. What I've seen is divinity or the Holy Spirit grabs their soul before they truly feel awful things.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I know that the animal that we see in front of us may be panting and crying, but I think it's the body rather than the soul that's suffering. I think the creator takes the soul and the feeling out of the animal. I think they just go into like the gazelle that gets bitten by the lion. They shut down. They can't
Mm-hmm.
feel anything anymore. Adrenaline goes through them, right? I think it's a similar. I feel like it's similar.
The soul is taken.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other questions people have about that difficult time is the idea of a soul contract. Is it predetermined, like from the date of birth, what the date they're going to die, whether or not we put them down or not?
Oh, totally. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
I think that we try to think that we're in control, and that is what causes our suffering. We imagine that somehow we're going to help this pet cross over, or I can save this pet's life. I've had clients that will spend, $50,000 to $100,000 saving their pet. I do not tell them not to do that if that is their choice and they have those kind of assets, because I think the person would suffer so badly
Hmm.
not trying to help the dog. And so I would get a clear vibration. This vet may be able to save the dog or may be able to help the dog. I feel that the vet's intentions are good. Because I did recently have a client that was having seizures, and it had to do, I don't know the exact thing, but it had to do with something happening in the brain. And it was so young, and it was her baby, the pocket dog she carried everywhere on set, on filming. And I think the vet had a great idea to direct just this point, a single shot of radiation where this area was in her brain. And I did feel like the vet was onto something. I felt the vet was really good. And I knew the client, unless she followed through with what the vet was offering, I think this woman just would have never been able to sleep at night
Hmm.
thinking that she could have done more.
That is hard though when there's like, especially if the animal's young or gets sick
Yes.
and we don't know why or how to help. Is there a lesson in that too, though? If you say like their death date was predetermined, like these poor people that lose a puppy, I know you've talked about before, or, a cat
Mhm.
gets FIP and dies early and it's so hard in rescue. We see that a lot with kittens. Is there still a reason for that life? It wasn't ever a mistake, right?
No, yeah, it was never a mistake. And I think grief and suffering for the human, it brings us to another level of deep compassion for ourselves and other animals.
Yeah.
I think it's all karmically created to bring us to the next higher level. It's not fun. Most of us are running from those bad feelings, right? So we'll have 50 parties and yeah, or go to 50 parties or shop or, and it's like, I just talked about this and wrote about this morning is like sitting with these horrible feelings that you feel you're not going to live through is actually the real work. Just sitting, not making the phone calls. I should talk. My coffee habit is like crazy, but if we could just sit with the crappy feelings, that's the real work, and not do anything to fix it
Or to avoid it.
or to avoid it or have your calendar back to back, back to back, back to back, making plans. I understand it though, because I have friends that have suffered a lot of loss and grief, a loss of a child. And I see how they they're always having a million people at their home. And it's a beautiful thing too, because they bring a lot of people together that wouldn't
Hmm.
ordinarily meet up. And I love that. But when we finally shut the door at night and we're left with ourselves, it's really dealing with the feelings that come up and not doing anything about it, like making the 50 phone calls that you think you need, or going and grabbing a box of crackers or cookies, or just the distractions or alcohol or any of that. If you just could sit with that and not do anything and just sit in those feelings, you do feel like you have come through something the following morning on it. And they just found this out with brain chemistry. Like the more that they call it willpower or the will to live. Whenever you supersede something,
Hmm.
that part of your brain, I don't know the name of the part of the brain, of course, I didn't remember that part, grows significantly.
Huh.
They're finding more and more that those people, those people that can work through that pain and suffering and will it through. And sometimes it's impossible. So there's like no judgment. I have always found it helpful, but I would cry through everybody else's loss, is I found like a group that I would go to or a chat room on pet loss.
Yeah.
I have for my own grief, I have literally found that really, really helpful.
Hmm.
When you hear somebody else's loss, it's hard,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
on many levels, it's hard, to hear that, especially for me, because I'm a big crier, which I think is great. People, I think cry, cry, cry. I think it's great.
Yeah. I think it is important to remember that everybody's timeline on grief is different. Everybody's reactions to it are different. But that's a good reminder that other people have gone through that too, have lost pets. And sometimes there's groups all the time. It's just a matter of finding them that if that gives you peace, then great.
It just might help when you have that level of grief
Yeah.
and you can hear other people's stories when you're going through that. I think it's
Hmm.
helpful because I think we judge ourselves so hard.
Yeah.
Like I have to get on with it. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I'm going to stay busy. That's like even if you're not busy to try to stay busy through grief, I think it will just come and bite you in the butt. I think that we
Hmm.
have to sit with these horrible feelings. And it goes back to that great expression, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's something about that, like sitting with the fear that you feel alone, that this baby abandoned you, or that they're gone, or they suffered, or all those feelings, just like we'll call all the things that we torture ourselves with. If we can sit with these feelings, I think this is like the golden ticket and not try to do something. And we could just sit with these feelings. I just think they're transformative.
I want to end back with that idea, the rainbow bridge. For the pet, the moment they're released from this life, this pain, this medical stuff, how do you describe that release of the soul? How does that feel for them? I think it's a
I,
better way for us to think than thinking about the final act of putting them down.
yeah, I think it's nirvana. I think it's like a total freedom that I don't even think like that they're so they can see us, they can feel us, they're with us. There's no separation. Just like the dead people, they're right by your face. They're a breath away. They're not in another reality. They can do whatever they want, and there's freedom. And so your dog can still go to the beach and go in the waves and, eat beef if it wants. Like there's a freedom, but they're multidimensional. So they're not just in heaven.
Hmm. Well, I hope that helps some people out there.
I think it will.
Let's remind them where to find you.
Yes, SusanEllenMedium.com.
Awesome.
And it's Animal Soul Speak.
Yes, do it. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Coffee with Dogs. I'm your host, Susan Ellen Medium. I would love for you to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. This helps everyone find me. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. From my soul to yours, and from our animals to us all, until we meet again.